So we have the boss and this blacksmith and a bunch of others sitting around the table after dinner talking. And they're talking about this and they're talking about that and they're talking about the other thing. And they start talking about money and what people get paid and how much people get paid and the differences between, you get paid 2 cents here, but the 2 cents buys far less than the 1 cent in the other place. And there he goes into somewhat about protectionism and free trade. Now, this is something that's been going on for a while. They're arguing protectionism and free trade, and protectionism and free trade are still issues that people talk about today. Where if you buy something cheaper one place, then you can buy something cheaper one place. So for instance, if you want to buy a chair here, you pay here prices. If you buy a chair from China, you pay China prices, and China prices are quite a bit less. So because the wages in China are quite a bit less. So this is the sort of thing that the boss was talking about, where we pay somebody $20 an hour to make a chair. China would pay 10 or less than 10. And so we pay $50 for a lumberjack to cut down wood. China pays 15 for the lumberjack to cut down wood. So they get the wood cheaper. They have the person assemble the chair cheaper. And so therefore they can sell the chair cheaper. Far cheaper than you could sell a chair made in America. So the US imports a lot of stuff from China where it's cheaper to make things. And then our money goes out to China and they use it, buy things, or they stock it up. And at some point in the future, they're going to say, okay, here we have all of this money. We want to buy your stuff. They buy land, they buy stock, they buy things that have value as, something, they buy a company that will continue to have value, will make them more money, or they buy land that will make them more money. And we buy the chairs and we buy whatever and the cheap labor. So protectionism is where you put a tax. And it's like, okay, you can bring the $100 chair that you bought in China that costs $200 here from China over to here, but you have to pay a tax on it. And the tax could be $50, it could be $100, it could be whatever. So a $100 chair with $150 worth of tax and will end up costing $250, which means that it is more expensive than the chair made here. And this sort of thing actually happens where the tariffs on some things are actually far, far higher than the price of the thing. Where there are some items that have 300% tax, 500% tax. There are some places where it is difficult to you're not even allowed to import the thing. So, for instance, in France, it is very difficult to import wine into France. It can be done, but it is a very difficult thing to do because France is very protective of its wine industry. So all of these farmers who grow wine...
You grow wine?
Well, you grow grapes to make wine, Lolly. So all of these farmers who grow grapes and make wine... No, the yeast makes the wine, but all of the farmers who grow the grapes and make the wine have protection in terms of the government says, okay, you can't bring in this wine, you can't bring in that wine. And there's all of these different sorts of things. And what this does is it tends to prop up the price of the wine. Because if you have wine that costs $1 a bottle to make, then it'll cost $2 of taxes, $3 of taxes. Oh, this is France, so they use the euro, but $1 is about €1. So you have a $1 bottle of wine with $2 of taxes, so it costs $3. And that means that if I am a Frenchman and I am producing wine, I can sell my wine for $3 a bottle and pocket the extra two because I don't have to deal with someone bringing in a $1 bottle of wine. I can sell it for 3. And I can pocket the extra $2 or extra, probably more than that, because the $1 bottle of wine has a little bit of profit baked into it too. So that $1 bottle of wine may have only cost 75 cents to make. So we have this whole thing. And so protectionism is trying to keep the prices high to benefit local producers so that the American chairmaker gets more money in wages and can still make chairs, or the French wine producer can pocket the extra couple of dollars and still produce wine in France. And sometimes it causes bad things to happen. It causes prices to go up. There have been major economic crashes brought about when countries decide to go protectionism, where they were worried. It's like, oh no, we have all of this cheap imports flooding in. And it's like all of the money's going away. And what are we going to do with all of the money going away? Well, we're going to raise tariffs. So you tax the stuff coming in. So all the money that goes into the tax stays inside of the country. So yes, you bring in the $1 bottle of wine, but with a $2 tax on it, that $2 stays inside of the country. And it disadvantages the wine. Well, what happened was there was a set of tariffs that were set up, and one country set up these tariffs. I can't remember who started it, but somebody started it. It may have been the US started it. Maybe it was in Europe where it was started, where it was like all of a sudden tax on everything coming in. And because there was this tax on everything, all of the other countries were like, hey, wait a minute, we can't sell our stuff. We gotta keep out their imports. And so they raised their taxes. And because all of a sudden things weren't moving, all of a sudden there was nothing being bought and there was nothing being sold. And all of the businesses started shutting down because there was nothing to buy and nothing to sell. And nobody was buying because all of the prices were going up because of all of these tariffs. So it just caused this massive economic collapse. And this is one of the things that they have to watch out for. And the way it seems to work best all around is if different countries specialize in different things. So we have one country that makes computers. We have one country that makes oil. We have one country that does education. We have one country. And so what happens is that you trade computers for oil, or you trade education for computers, or you trade oil for education, so that the one country who specializes in the one thing, has all of the things around them, has all of the benefits, so that you can have the French wine, and you can have the Saudi oil, and you can have the Chinese computers, and you can have all of these different things from all over. And that's how it works on a small scale too. I can do plumbing. I can do electrical work. I am absolutely miserable at these things. It will take me 10 times as long to put in a simple pipe as it'll take a plumber. It'll take me 10 times as long, and it'll end up leaking, and I'll have to do it 5 times. But I can do it. I am good at programming computers. And so because I'm good at programming computers, I trade my computer programming skill for money. And I trade that money for someone to come in and do plumbing. Or I trade it for somebody to make a lawnmower. I can't make a lawnmower. I have no idea of how to make a lawnmower. I suppose if I sat down long enough, I might be able to make a lawnmower. While the company that makes lawnmowers, well, they buy engines, they buy blades, and they put the things together. And so they can, they have the big machines that stamp steel. I can't stamp steel. If I wanted to make a steel lawnmower deck, I would have to go out and buy a big sheet of steel. I can't even make the big sheet of steel. And then I'd have to sit there with a hammer and just bang away at it until it was roughly the right shape. I'd never even get it close to the right shape. And cut it. Never be able to make an engine to run the lawnmower. But, that's okay. Because, I can trade my work for their work. And so there are countries that will never produce oil. Iceland Iceland might have deep sea deposits. I'm just trying to think. Swaziland will never have oil. Just impossible. Small country in Africa. I've been there. Nice people, beautiful countryside. But they're landlocked. They don't have much in the way of natural resources. So they trade labor. So Swazis tend to work in other countries and then send the money back home. But Swaziland will never have oil because the geography's wrong. And because they will never have oil, and they need oil because they have cars and they have cars and planes just like we do, but they don't have the oil to fill up the gas tank. So they have to trade stuff for it. So, the protectionism, and it gets bad, but free trade can also go really badly. There's something called dumping, which is really kind of bad. And it's sort of a predatory practice. So what it is let's say China wants to make bicycles. This is an example that actually happened. So China wants to make bicycles. And so what they do is the government subsidizes the local bicycle industry. And the government pays the company to make bicycles. So even though the labor is cheaper, and it only costs them $20 to make a bicycle as opposed to $50 to make a bicycle here in America, the government says, we'll pay you to make bicycles for export. So the government pays the company $10 for every bicycle they make. Which means instead of costing $20, it costs $10. And they take these $10 bicycles and they put them on a boat and they send them over to the US. And all of a sudden you have these $10 bicycles flooding the market. And even with the taxes, the $10 bicycle becomes a $50 bicycle, $40 bicycle. But it costs $50 to make the bicycle, $100 markup. And all of a sudden you have all of these bikes which are just cheap and they're showing up. And so the local companies, they can't make the bicycles anymore because no one wants to pay $100 for a bicycle when you can pay a $50 one. So what happens is they just keep flooding the market with cheap whatever until they're the only supplier. And once they become the only supplier, once they have a monopoly on it, and that's what dumping is all about. Dumping is about undercutting, subsidizing the undercutting until you're the only supplier. And once you're the only supplier, you can take your $50 bicycle and charge $200 for it because there's nobody who's making the $100 bicycle anymore. So all of a sudden, by just undercutting it a little bit, forcing everyone else out of the game, you can just blow through, you can effectively become a monopoly and then charge whatever you want. And the problem becomes a problem because it takes so much effort to get a bicycle manufacturing operation started. It costs so much money to get started that even though there would be great margins in making bicycles, if you could go back to making the $100 bicycle, you would clean up The problem is that it costs money to build a factory. It costs money to get the people going. It costs money to get the plans. It costs expertise because there's a lot of knowledge that goes into making something. You know, as I said, it would take me 5 times as long to do the plumbing. I can solder a pipe as fast as anyone. I can glue PVC. PVC glues just as fast for me as it does for everyone else. But I don't have the skill to apply the glue. I have to look up the instructions. I get the wrong part and have to make another trip. Well, the professional plumber is like, pull these things out of his truck. He doesn't have to run out to Lowe's. Slap it together, dry fit, pull it out, boom, 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 boom. And his hands just know the motions of all of this. And it's just like pop it in place and done. So you lose those skills when the industry goes away. Now, so that's the problem with monopolies and, things happening. But sometimes monopolies can happen because the person is just that much better at making it. There have been a lot of instances where there's a technological innovation. Henry Ford did not invent the car. He invented a way to make cars cheaply. So he invented making the $100 chair as opposed to the $200 chair, making the $50 bicycle. And because he could make it, the prices dropped. And that's one of the things that sometimes happen. And it usually happens when there's a lot of technological innovation, when there's a lot of technological innovation, when there's a field that's growing and expanding. If you're to take a look at computers, early home computers were $6,000, $8,000. And you're like, well, nice gaming machine, an Alienware gaming machine is about $5,000. That's not that out of the line. But the thing is that was a low-end machine for $6,000, $8,000. And it is laughable compared to what the modern ones were. I mean, the cell phone. This cell phone has more computing power than all of the computing power in the world was 50 years ago. So when I was born, this was more than a supercomputer. This was almost all of the computing power in the world then I hold in my hand today. Because we're just that much better at making computers. And this happens with all sorts of things. But usually the prices don't drop. And it's only when there's a massive, massive expansion of the ability to make things that the prices drop. And so you had a lot of this happen with the Industrial Revolution, where prices for things just dropped. Because it's like all of a sudden you can make 1,000 nails a day. You could make 10,000 nails a day, as opposed to making 15 or 20 nails when you had to get the block of iron, had to roll it, had to cut it by hand, as opposed to the machines that take the molten iron and then, you do the rolling and cutting, all of this by machine, and all you have to do is turn a crank and nails spit out. As opposed to doing it by hand and measuring and cutting, and with, you heat the metal up. You take a chisel bladed hammer and you go, and it, makes a little dent, and then you break that off. You dent it from the other side, and then you dent the lines. And then you take that and you pound it out until it's long, and you pound it out until it's straight, and then maybe you roll it. But the machine, it's just you turn the crank and the nails shoot out. It's almost like magic. And so the prices for things can drop. Inflation is what he's talking about the prices going up and up and up. And right now, it's running about 7% a year. A year ago, 2 years ago, it was about 1 or 2% a year. So it's jumped up a lot. And some things it's jumped up even more because there are reasons. Well, war is one of the big reasons. Right now, when I'm recording this, Russia and Ukraine are fighting. Russia and Ukraine both make oil. So because you have this massive supply of oil, Russia is like the number 2 oil producer, number 3 oil producer. Um, because you have this massive disruption of oil, the price of oil goes up. Russia and Ukraine both make wheat. Because they both make a lot of wheat, the price of wheat is going up. They both make fertilizer. The price of fertilizer is going up, which means in 6 months to a year, the price of wheat is going to go up even more. The price of soybeans is going to go up even more. Because the price of wheat and soybeans are going up, 6 months down the road from that, you're going to have the price of cows going up and chickens going up. That means eggs and milk are going to get more expensive because it costs more soybeans and wheat to feed them. Because it costs more, and the price of wheat and soybeans are going up partially because of the war, but partially because of the fertilizer. And so you have this long carry-on thing, and things are not going to get better anytime soon. So we're having 7% inflation this year. Next year, it's probably going to be 7 or 8. My money's on 8. If anyone wants to call me out on it, please do. But, it's going to be 8% inflation next year, and then maybe it'll calm down a little bit, but those prices are going to stay because, as the boss said, wages don't go down. And everybody's going to need more wages to buy stuff that they actually need. There's going to be a whole bunch of luxury goods that just aren't going to happen. So I kind of feel sorry for the people making computers because you can stretch an extra year or two out of the computer usually. Phones, same way. You don't have to have the newest one. You don't have to have the nicest one. If it makes calls, it makes calls, and that's that. So these things are going to stretch out and things are going to get bad. But, your parents love you and your parents are clever and they'll take care of it. And they'll get clever and take care of it, and the world will get better eventually.